Good evening and welcome to the City of Roswell special called Mayor and City Council meeting for May 11th, 2023. I'm Mayor Kurt Wilson. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues and council members present. Council Member Sarah Beeson, Council Member Christine Hall, Council Member Lee Hills, Council Member William Mortland, Council Member Michael Palermo, and Councilmember Dr. Peter Vanstrom. I'll now turn it over to our City Administrator, Mr. Randy Knighton, to explain how the meeting is run. Mr. Knighton, please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson, and good evening, everyone. In accordance with Section Chapter 3.70 of the City Code, the City Council shall hold regular public meetings, and the mayor can call a special called Mayor and Council meeting as needed. The purpose of City Council meetings are for the public to participate and speak on agenda items which constitute formal decisions by the elected body. These items are published on the city's website and can be accessed prior to the meeting. This is a public meeting, and some of the items do require a formal public hearing. A significant and important component of City Council meetings are to hear directly from residents on items listed on the agenda. Public comments or questions are essential for Mayor and Council to consider and contemplate as they make decisions. If you would like to speak on a particular item this evening when requested, you can certainly fill out a comment card, which are located at the back of the room. We ask, of course, that everyone observe the principles of mutual respect and display the appropriate demeanor during the meeting this evening, which is reflective of this great community. The mayor, of course, is the presiding officer of the meeting and will ensure the orderly exchange of comments, questions, and discussion leading to decision-making by the elected body. We also, as always, encourage people to visit our website and other social media platforms to receive information on events and departmental information. We encourage you also to take part and participate in the various activities here in the city of Roswell, which promote community, physical activity, and leisure as we all make Roswell the #1 family community in America. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. We have a very special guest, and I have the great pleasure and privilege of introducing the retired minister of music from First Baptist Church, the Reverend Jerry Tyler, to the front for our invocation and moment of silence.
First and foremost, and I believe the good Lord will postpone the prayer for me to take just a moment as the minister of music of First Baptist Church of Roswell, where we just last week had former Mayor Pug Mabry's service, thanking the mayor pro tem, the council, the police department, the fire department. You all helped us celebrate the legacy and the long life of Pug Mabry. And I, on behalf of First Baptist Church, would like to say thanks to all of you for making that day special for Pug and especially for his wife, Sandra. Pray with me. Father, we thank you for every blessing you give to us, and every person in this room today is blessed by living in the garden spot of the world. Roswell is a great place to live, and we are privileged to be citizens of this place. But it's that way because of the leadership that it has had through the years, and now the leadership that we have now. So my prayer is that you would bless every one of them, no matter what the department, in a very special way as they seek your guidance in leading our town, our city, to even be a better place to live. We thank you in the holy, precious name of Jesus Christ, and we make this prayer in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Would you do the pledge with me, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Tyler. And if any of y'all haven't been to First Baptist Church, not a bad place to go hear some great music. One last item before we go to the consent agenda. I'm going to call on Councilmember Hills to make some very special announcements.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. This morning, we had the pleasure of recognizing 4 of our local high schools, Roswell High, Centennial High, Fellowship Christian School, high schoolers, and Blessed Trinity for some of their athletes that are going to semifinals and finals, and a couple have already won and awarded. So I just wanted to tell you about what's going on this weekend. So if you're around, we'd love to see your faces at some of these events. And this will be in chronological order Saturday, so you can just make your whole menu and check them all off the list like many of us will be doing. So Fellowship Christian, they will be playing in the baseball semifinal game on Saturday at home, and they're scheduled to play at 11 and 2 p.m. Then we have Centennial playing at home, a doubleheader against McIntosh High, and that's at 3 o'clock. And that's the final, that's the biggie. And then we have Roswell lacrosse on Saturday. The girls are playing Blessed Trinity for the state finals at 3 o'clock at Denmark High School. And then the boys lacrosse from Roswell High School play at 6 for the state championship. So we're very proud of the athletes. So many of them, well, actually all the seniors are going to great schools, and they were just very excited. So love to have anybody that can go. It's welcome, open to the public for all those. You do pay at the gate, and then cheer, cheer, cheer. So go all of our Roswell teams. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Hills. I can't echo that enough. There are 4 great high schools that all have really cool achievement in athletics that's going on this weekend, so there's something for everybody in the city to go support 1 or 2 of these great high schools. Thank you. Yes. All right, so next is the consent agenda. Does council have any questions or comments regarding the item on the consent agenda? Being that there are no comments or questions from council, does any Roswell residents have any comments or questions on the consent agenda? Being that there are none from Roswell residents, I bring it back to one last time. No comments or questions. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion from Councilmember Beeson to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All those in favor of passing the consent agenda, please raise your hands. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is from the Finance Department. Councilmember Hall, would you please read the item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Item number 2, the presentation of the fiscal year 2023 third quarter budget report and the fiscal year 2023 third quarter investment report. And this will be presented by Lynn.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here to talk about the monthly budget report. This is the third quarter report. So this is as of March. So I'm going to skip over because I'm going to talk about the words using the visuals. So here is the visuals. So general fund is coming in well for revenues at 83.5 actual over 79.9 projected. And the expenditure budget has come in so far at 68.2 versus the projected of 70.8. So we are looking good in general fund. I will say that we are looking at a projected estimated ending fund balance of about $3 million that we have projected to use going forward. So in general fund, property tax, the property tax is increased there of $714,900. That is primarily due to title ad valorem tax, the taxes that you pay when you buy a new vehicle, and those have been coming in well over the year. The cars, of course, prices have been really high early on in the year, the fiscal year. March was the lowest we had received at $277,000. The max we received up to this point was $418,000. So it is down a little bit, and we may see that start to mellow out as we go. There is also within that property tax some real estate transfer tax. that due to the housing market and an intangible tax that also happens on loans, that because the interest has been high, the market on the housing hasn't gone as fast. We have seen a slight drop in those compared to what we would expect it to be. So it's been about 200,000 lower than what we would expect to see as of this time. So moving on to sales tax. Sales tax has come in about 6% over the projection to date. That's 1.3 million. So that is reflective of the market doing very well, and that is after the adjustment to the distribution. The business tax collections have come in about 295, 400 over what we would expect in most cases, and that is primarily due to electric franchise. So as the electric fees go up, what they pay us also does. So that went up by about 185 over the budget. As of March, we had collected occupation tax of about 5.5, and as of today, we have collected 6.2. So we're about 800,000 close to pulling in all of the budget on that as well. All right, and next, license and permits. That is primarily due to construction at about 247. That has been trending all the way through. That I mentioned that also in the last report. The court or fines and forfeitures has running about 293 over, primarily due to school zone fines. And the court fees have been about 782,000 out of $1 million budget. So we're about 78% of the budget on that one as well. The expenditures, looking at salaries and operating and transfers there, the budget is 98 million. We have spent 68 million. We are within 2.5 of our projection, and most of that is due to salaries and benefits. A lot of that was early on. We have had a lot of turnover throughout the year, and we did have some vacancy savings that I mentioned again at the last one on fire. So, moving on, water fund. The water fund is coming in above their projected revenue. Most of it is due to what you see back there in September, and that was the capacity fees due to a construction. That's a one-time fee paid when something goes in. So other than that, they are trending very well. And the expenditures are under their projected year-to-date and under budget. For solid waste, we are looking at 9.5 collected in compared to 9.4 million. And the expenditures are at 9.8 compared to the 10.3 that we had projected. So we are above on revenues and under on expenses. In rec participation fund, the 6.3 projected here is without the $1 million adjustment that y'all just passed at a previous council meeting. We haven't added it to the budget because this is reflective as of March, and so that did not have the extra $1 million that we did as a budget amendment. So the projection would be a little bit higher and closer to what our actuals are in that revenue in that case. And our expenditures would be under the projection once you plug in that number next month. Hotel motel, this is trending well. 1.1 million revenue over 1 million projected. The expenditures are 1.4 and we projected 1.4. These are typically paid out or transferred to general fund or E911. There is a revenue of 2 million actual to date. The projected was at 1.8. And for the expenditures, they are under on the projected to date. So 2.3 projected and 2 million spent to date. T-Splost. This is the T-Splost 1. So we're not collecting any new revenues here. This is the interest. And so we have collected 1.1 in interest, and we projected 265,000. The expenditures have been 3.6 million, and we projected 5. T-Splost 2, those projections have been coming in well, and this one is based on the sales tax coming in. So 5.5 million over the projected 14 that we had expected. In expenditures, we had spent 340 year to date. So, and then here is a summary of all of the funds that are within. Are there any questions?
Lynn, thank you for the presentation. Any questions or comments from council? Thank you, Lynn, for your great work there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I'll be talking about our third quarter investment report. I always like to remind everyone that the city does have an investment program, and we are governed by the city's investment policy as well as state laws regarding how we invest. And the purpose is to maximize any funds that we are holding while we're waiting to spend those for city services. I will point out at the bottom of this page, so to give you an overview of the overall portfolio, as of March 31st, our portfolio yield was a little over 3% at 3.19% compared to the one-year treasury at 4.47%. You can see over the 12 months, our portfolio yield has increased by about 247 basis points. As you know, the Federal Reserve recently increased the Fed funds rate by another quarter point. And so that range is now at 5 to 5.25. And we'll talk about kind of how that affects us here in just a moment. On the next page, this gives you a 12-month trend of that same information, our portfolio yield, as compared to the one-year Treasury benchmark. And you can see that for the month of March, we are earning about 130 basis points less than the one-year Treasury benchmark. The pie chart at the bottom gives you an indication of how our portfolio is spread across all of our various investment vehicles. And so you can see that about a third of our portfolio is invested in federal agency bonds. 23% is in Georgia Fund 1, which is our local government investment pool. We have about 16% in bank deposits, 9% in the money market account, 12% in U.S. Treasury bonds, 8% in CDs, and less than 1% in municipal bonds. On the next page, this gives you a little bit more detail about how those dollars are spread out. And you can see that as of the third quarter, our portfolio totaled about $192.7 million. The bulk of that is made up of our general fund reserve, as well as funds in our T-Splost funds that are unspent at this point, but planned and allocated for projects, as well as our just general capital projects fund. All funds allocated for projects, but they just are in the process of being spent, as well as our ARPA funding that is also allocated and just waiting to be spent. At the bottom of this page, this gives you a 12-month look back at how our investment portfolio has been spread across the different vehicles that we have. And you can see the trend that you see here is about a year ago, rates were lower, there weren't as many investment opportunities, and so a lot of our portfolio was in our local government investment pool, Georgia Fund 1. And you can see that over the last 12 months, that portion has decreased while we have had more opportunities to invest in federal agency bonds that have become available over the last 12 months. The next page gets into our portfolio liquidity. So the average length to maturity for the portfolio is 1.91 years. And in the table that you see there at the top, those first three lines, Georgia Fund 1, bank deposits, and our money market account, Those are very short term, so average length maturity 1 day. And you can see that the effective rate of return for those 3 items closely mirrors what rates are doing today in the short term. The last 4 lines, federal agencies, treasury bonds, CDs, municipal bonds, those take more time for us we have to allow those to come to maturity, then we can invest in higher yielding investments. At the bottom of this page, you see the maturity schedule for the portfolio, and you can see a little less than half of the portfolio is available, is very liquid within the day. And then the remainder of the portfolio is pretty evenly spread across the 5 years. Beyond that, the remainder of the report gets into details of all the various CDs and bonds that the city currently owns. That's the conclusion of this report, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Ryan, that's it?
That's it.
Well, let me say this, and I know it's shared by all my colleagues. The health of the city financially is in incredibly sound financial condition due to the outstanding work of yourself and Lynn and the department. So thank you very much. Excellent presentation, and thanks for bringing us up to speed on the third quarter. Well done. Sorry, I was going over with Randy, with some of your numbers there. Randy was just double checking them. He had a couple of issues he wanted to bring up. Before we go into the mayor's report, can you just, I'm going to put you on the spot, because I think you got some more good news that we haven't officially put out a press release on, which I think Julie will probably do tomorrow. But I think it's worth noting as before we get into the presentation of the FY24 budget. Would you share that with everybody?
Sure. So as you all know, you all approved a couple of weeks ago for us to move forward with our first bond issuance, and so we have been going through that process. I believe it was May 1st, we had our call with the rating agencies, Moody's and S&P, and did our presentation for them to talk about the city's finances, the plans for the bonds. And we heard back yesterday that the city has maintained its AAA bond rating from both Moody's and S&P. So,
Yeah, that's outstanding. So even after the bond issuance, the city of Roswell maintains its AAA bond rating with Moody's. Well done, sir. Thank you. Thanks for letting everybody know that. All right, so that concludes the part of our meeting. We'll go to well, actually, I guess the last agenda on the mayor's report is the presentation of the mayor's FY24 proposed budget. And I'd like to make a note that tonight's the presentation of the budget, and then there'll be 2 subsequent readings of the budget after tonight. And I want to get on the record that there'll be the calling of a special called budget meeting on May 25th, which will be the second reading of the budget. So just want to make that publicly known. That this is the presentation of the budget. May 22nd will be the first reading of the budget, and May 25th will be a special called meeting for the second reading of the FY24 budget. So with that being said, Mr. Luckett, would you come forward and give us the presentation of the FY24 budget?
thank you, Mayor. So as you mentioned, we did want to point out key dates associated with the budget process. So today we are presenting the proposed budget, first budget reading, as the mayor just said, on Monday, May 22nd, 7 p.m. Second budget reading and adoption scheduled for Thursday, May 25th, 7 p.m. So the agenda for tonight's presentation, we will provide some budget highlights for the proposed budget. We'll talk about all funds and how that looks across the city. We'll get into specifically the general fund, which is our main primary operating fund for the city. We'll provide you some highlights of our other funds, as well as some next steps in the process. This will be a team effort, so there'll be times during the presentation where some of the other department heads will come up and provide you some details about some of their aspects of the budget, the proposed budget. So we will get into first the FY 2024 budget highlights. So the budget is balanced. The proposed budget begins implementation of zero-based budget process initiatives. It continues Mayor and Council's prioritization of public safety investments, and it funds over $30 million in capital investment. I'll talk a little bit about some of these specifically. So first, I wanted to talk a little bit about the zero-based budgeting process. So this was a process that began last fall and continues on. So each department.
Your colleagues are not laughing.
Each department was challenged to rethink their organization and reimagine how they would build the department as if they were starting from scratch. The effort also focused on trying to make sure our budget was aligned with the city's vision to be the #1 family community in America. So through that work, countless ideas, initiatives, opportunities arose for how we could go about improving city services and making them more efficient and more effective for our residents and our businesses. Some of those ideas we're ready to implement, and you'll see those reflected in the budget for FY 2024. And some of those will take more time and effort and work on behalf of staff before they're ready to be moved forward. So of those, I wanted to mention a few that are addressed in the FY 2024 proposed budget. One of those includes enhancing the strategic role of information technology. And one of the kind of initial simple ways that we've done that in the budget is for the first time we've created IT as an internal service fund and brought everything IT related across the entire city organization under one budget, under the control of the IT division. And that's really just the first step in what's to come for IT on behalf of the city. Additionally, the budget expands code enforcement efforts to sustain and enrich the quality of life in Roswell. It increases investment in the city's stormwater management capabilities, and we'll get into more details about what that looks like here in just a few minutes. And through this process, over $3 million in savings have been identified and incorporated into the proposed budget. And as I mentioned, this isn't the end of zero-based budgeting. It will continue on into 2024. The public safety, as I mentioned, is another important component of the proposed budget. The budget includes year 2 of 5 of the full-time fire department transition plan, and this includes adding 25 full-time positions. It includes also the addition of a full-time dedicated emergency management position for the city. The budget also includes best-in-class compensation for 911 communications officers, as well as an expansion of efforts to combat crimes against children with the addition of 2 full-time positions. I mentioned capital investment. The proposed budget includes $21 million in transportation projects. That includes road resurfacing and reconstruction, bridge replacements, Riverside Road corridor improvements, Pine Grove Road corridor improvements, and various multi-use trails, just to name a few. And then finally, under capital, the budget includes $5 million to begin the Historic Parks and Botanical Gardens Division activation and maintenance plan. The purpose of that plan is to enhance our historic venues and grounds for public activation. So with that, we'll get into all funds. So this is the aggregation of all of our city funds that are managed and giving you an idea of what that looks like across the city. So all funds total to $199.1 million. And you can see that that's comprised of sales taxes, property taxes, and charges for service. Our property tax revenue here in this graph shows you a 10-year history of how that has looked, and you can see across those 10 years, the millage rate has declined over the last 4 to 5 years. The Property tax revenue is estimated to come in at $32 million, which is a decline from FY22, primarily because the millage rate was decreased in FY23. The budget does include $33 million of property tax revenues proposed for FY 2024, with some explanation here to go along with that. So the proposed budget was built on maintaining the current millage rate of 4.463 mils. That's reflected in the revenue numbers that you're seeing. But I will point out that flexibility does exist within the budget to adopt a lower millage rate once we receive the tax digest from Fulton County, and we usually get that around early July. Additionally, I want to point out that the proposed budget does not include the additional millage rate that will be necessary for the voter-approved bond referendum. Again, all that will be factored in once the bond sale is complete and the details of the tax digest are known. The following slide gives you a 10-year history of our sales tax revenues. You can see over the last couple of years, we've had tremendous growth in sales tax. FY23 in the general fund, we're anticipating $32.5 million in local option sales tax and $20.5 million in T-SPOS. We are anticipating and planning for a slight decline in local option sales tax for a couple of reasons. One, just anticipating some slowdown in economic activity, as well as a transition from the purchase of goods, the focus on the purchase of goods back to services, as was the case prior to the pandemic. Along with that, this does factor in the new loss distribution that went into effect in January of this year. Some other revenue assumptions that we wanted to mention, so stormwater fees. The proposed budget does include a rate increase for FY 2024. And as an example, Tier 2 customers would increase from $495 to $545 per month. That increase goes to fund enhanced stormwater management capabilities, and we'll get into those details here in a few moments. On the water fund, a rate study was completed in FY 2023, and what that study showed was that our current rate structure is susceptible to volatility, and that the fixed revenue recovery that we realize today is actually lower than industry standards. So the recommendation for 2024 is that volumetric rates remain unchanged, but that we do adjust base rates to help limit future volatility. What that means is that for residential customers, that equates to roughly a $3 per month increase. That rate study also recommended rate adjustments of 6 to 7% going forward through FY 2029. Solid waste fees. The budget does include a recommendation for an increase in residential and commercial rates. So as an example, the standard residential rate would increase by $2.46 per month. That increase is being driven primarily by inflationary cost increases. That includes our yard waste and recycling contract, fuel cost, as well as the cost of our refuse collection trucks. So that finishes up the talk about revenues across all funds. This slide gives you how those funds are being utilized. And so you can see here, the total use of funds across all funds is $194.3 million as proposed. The bulk of that goes towards police at 18%, transportation 17%, recreation and parks at 16%, and environmental public works at 15% of that total. In terms of full-time positions, there is an increase in FY 2024, recommendation of 47 additional positions. All of these are in alignment with the strategic priorities of the city. We've I tried to outline that here for you. 25 of those for the full-time fire department, 6 to switch from a contract to a in-house landscaping crew for recreation and parks, 5 positions to enhance those stormwater capabilities that we've talked about, 3 going towards code enforcement, 2 for the crimes against children unit, 1 dedicated to emergency management, and 1 dedicated to a new customer service. Next section, we will get into the general fund, and I'm going to hit some of the highlights, and then I'll turn it over to some of my colleagues to talk about some of their specific initiatives for their respective departments. So the source of funds for the general fund, revenues or sources of funds totals $100.5 million. That's roughly split up a third for property tax, a third in sales tax, 22% in business taxes, and 12% in other revenues. By department, you can see that the police department makes up about 30% of that total. 17% is recreation and parks, 12% for administration, and 15% for fire. If we look at that same number across the expenditure type, salaries and benefits make up about 64% of the total general fund budget. Operating costs are 19%, transfers, capital, and other expenditures make up about 17% of that total. So overall, this table gives you a summary of the general fund, and I'll walk through this. So the general fund estimated beginning fund balance for 2024 is $27.4 million. That includes our reserve policy. We are projecting revenues in 2024 of $98.9 million. You can see that the proposed operating budget for across all departments in the general fund is $97.1 million. We're proposing that the general fund capital expenditures of $3.3 million, which gives us a total proposed general fund budget of $100.5 million. Based on these new numbers, our general fund reserve requirement goes to $23.4 million, which leaves a remaining fund balance in the general fund of $2.4 million. So with that, I will turn it over to our city administrator, Mr. Knighton, who will discuss administration.
Welcome, Mr. Knighton. It's kind of fun to see you there.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I appreciate the opportunity this evening. Certainly want to commend the great work of the Finance Department, Mr. Luckett, and Ms. Williams as well, and their entire team and staff. I will also say that this process has been challenging. It has been arduous. At times it has been somewhat contentious, but it's been a great process, and I will say that whenever there is the contemplation of spending taxpayer money, challenging questions should be asked. And all of us, of course, elected officials and appointed officials alike, have a responsibility for ensuring proper stewardship over finances. And so we appreciate the opportunity to work through this process. I will briefly go over a couple of items related to administration and then allow for the other department heads to come forward and also mention some specific highlights as it relates to the proposed FY24 budget. A couple of items under administration. One would be the full-time emergency management position. As Mr. Luckett mentioned earlier, that position specifically would ensure that the city is well positioned to handle and plan for any emergencies should they occur. They will be involved in working with not only internal partners but external partners as well. Also, there is money set aside, $75,000 for a new city website. Of course, that is a priority to continue to raise our communication platform and engagement of citizens and those who visit the city of Roswell, as well as there is a proposed full-time HR coordinator position for employee relations, primarily working with the onboarding of police, fire, and also to ensure that there's proper analysis and evaluation of the entire staff. The next item is a full-time, there are proposed five full-time court clerk positions, and that would contemplate eliminating the current contract, and we believe would save about $40,000. The next position would be for a full-time customer service manager position. Obviously, that is something that has been a priority, I believe, of Mayor and Council, and certainly we want to ensure that we are properly and efficiently serving residents at a high level. That position would be charged with setting forth a foundation of how we will engage citizens at a more direct level here at City Hall and beyond. In addition, we have two software items, one for HR. That software position or software apparatus in HR would ensure that we are addressing issues like payroll, time and attendance, talent acquisition, open enrollment, and performance management. There are many things right now that are being done quite frankly, in a manual fashion, and so we need to automate. The next item would be a community development permit application software, and that would also facilitate the development community in navigating the permit process. That will be done in a fashion that will allow them to engage an online platform and be able to track their permit throughout the entire process. With that, I will give way to, I believe it's community development next, but I'll also say I want to acknowledge our Chief Operating Officer, Rich Reinhardt, who came in just a few weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, but definitely provided a great perspective in this process as we begin to reach a final draft budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jason Gaines, Community Development. I want to talk about the additions to the team in community development that we're proposing through the fiscal year 24 budget. We hear you loud and clear when you talk about improving the aesthetics of the city, improving quality of life in the city, and how code enforcement goes hand in hand with that. So along with that, we're proposing to add 3 positions totaling just under $319,000 total. One is an additional full-time code enforcement officer to join the 4 that we already have on our team, as well as 2 what we are listing as enforcement inspector 2s. These are actually building inspectors, but our building inspectors enforce building code, and they are very, very critical when it comes to making sure that construction projects involving new construction and renovations are done according to code. And if there's something wrong, then they have the ability to enforce the building code through notice of violations and citations and so on and so forth, very similar to what code enforcement officers do when it comes to property maintenance. So those are our proposed additions, and we look forward to doing our part to implement the vision of being the #1 family community in America. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gaines. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Talk a little bit about the fire department's proposals for FY 2024. And to be the #1 family community in America, you have to have safety.
By the way, we don't know who you are, so you're some stranger walked up on the street.
I'm Jim Conway, please treat. Joe Panino, Fire Chief.
Dr. Joe Panino.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. So for us, this is the proposal would represent a huge enhancement for public safety in the fire department. I'll start with the personal protective equipment. Obviously, the turnout gear that our men and women wear when they go into burning buildings is extremely important. So the $220,000 is a step towards maintaining that gear and making sure it's replaced as it should be. The full-time captain of logistics would be the first full-time position the fire department has ever had that is focused on maintaining the 7 fire stations, our dozens of apparatus, and making sure the over 200 men and women that we have in the fire department have the tools and equipment that they need to do their job. And that is going to be a significant improvement for us to make sure that we have that position full-time. And then, of course, it's the second year of the full-time transition. I can't probably express enough how much of a difference the 21 full-time captains have made in our operation and the organization and the safety and the service to our citizens. I could probably stay up here all night and not cover it. And this year, too, continues that. So starting with the 3 battalion chiefs, the 3 additional full-time battalion chiefs, those will come internally, which I'm very proud and happy to say that will come from our internal staff, including from those 21 full-time captains that we hired last year. There's a lot of interest in those positions, as well as the 9 lieutenants and the 12 paramedics. That's going to finish out our supervisory staff and help really get that foundation to make sure as we bring on those additional full-time staff, that the culture is right and that we have a firm foundation to bring those other full-time staff on. So we absolutely appreciate the support. It is making a huge difference. And I also want to talk about the emergency management position. That is something that we asked for and advocated for, whether that's in the fire department or that's in the administrative division. That is a big deal, and a city our size of 100,000 people absolutely needs that full-time emergency management position. So I'm very happy to see that in there. So thank you, and that's our proposals for the FY 2024 budget.
Thank you, Dr. Joe Panino. Fire Chief.
Not sure how to follow that. Jim Conroy, Chief of Police for the City of Roswell.
Well, that's a good start right there, Jim. At least you got your name right.
I'm also captain of the Police Department kickball team, which will be going against the Fire Department next week. So look forward to seeing you at the kickball game. We have several items for operating and capital enhancements that I would like to talk about. The first is the addition of 2 full-time positions to expand our Crimes Against Children unit. This is a continued investment to combat sexual predators in our community, as well as protect our most vulnerable members of the community from internet crimes, physical abuse, and sexual abuse. We started that last year, have had great success, and continue the expansion of that unit to help protect our youth of our community. The second item is adding funding for our Police Reserve Officer program. Currently, that's funded through salary savings. Due to the best-in-class police pay, we do not have any salary savings because we have 0 vacancies. This allows funding to help fund those part-time retired officers, maintain that expertise, and help serve our community, as well as funding positions when we know somebody's about to retire and we have a great candidate, we can get them on board and get them trained and ready to run. So as soon as we have that vacant position from somebody retiring or leaving our department, their replacement is ready to hit the ground running. Next is the increase of funding for ammunition. Due to worldwide issues, the war in Ukraine and Russia that's going on, the cost of ammunition has skyrocketed, and this will allow us to purchase ammunition for training and semi-annual qualifications for our officers, as well as our duty ammunition that's required. Adjacent to that is increased funding for SWAT range rental fees. SWAT team that we share with Roswell, Alpharetta, and Milton. It's important that we maintain their training, and costs for the range fees for these units has increased, so this represents a $15,000 increase, which is our portion of that shared expense. Next position is to reclassify 1 position to create a captain for the Uniform Patrol Division. As we're a Uniform Patrol is our largest division in the police department. Right now, Major Kyle Ratliff runs that on his own 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I think he needs a little bit of a break in the evenings, so this would provide an executive officer to assist in oversight from that division and allow him to focus on long-range plans instead of just playing catch-up with paperwork that his division generates. And finally, additional investment into the Roswell Crime Center is 2 additional automated license plate recognition devices. As you who read our daily activity reports understand how successful this is in combating and reducing crime. This is 2 additional mobile license plate reader devices that will be attached to our police vehicles that will help us catch perpetrators as well as prevent crime in the long run. And I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Chief, very much.
We'll see everybody next Friday at the kickball game.
That's right. We're taking, we're having no gambling, official gambling bets, but there's odds being laid who's going to win, police or fire.
Jeff Leatherman, lead referee for said kickball game, and I will be also the Recreation and Parks Director, Historic and Cultural Affairs. This budget has an amazing opportunity in it to transition our Historic Parks and Botanical Gardens program from a planning document into reality. And also do that by taking contract services that we currently use to maintain those parks and facilities and bring them in-house under a unified team that not only will maintain our parks and facilities and the historic assets, but also our cemeteries, both the Woodstock Cemetery and Founders Cemetery. And so you see the funding, not only bringing on Holly Hill, those are just the operational costs associated with the new home there, but the 6 full-time landscape maintenance crew positions that will transition those projects over from contract into staffing. Also, the wedding planner and event planner position to activate that historic park and botanical garden plan. Making those properties available in activation not only for the community but from a revenue perspective, welcoming the community onto those properties and celebrating everything that they have to offer, not only our interpretation but also community celebration and individual celebrations throughout our community, and welcoming visitors in to what hopefully will be our new hotels and onto those properties. The exciting part is the vast majority of them are right in our historic district, 24 acres of park property smack dab in the middle of our community that we will begin to activate in a very real way. Part of that is also the dump truck, which you see down there at the bottom, will help them be successful just as a piece of equipment. And we talked about this at committee, but we have the funding available in this budget as it's recommended to initiate the dredging project along the Chattahoochee River. Widely important for a lot of reasons, but also recreation, the activation of our River Parks Master Plan, and that funding truly kicks off what I think will be a change project down along Chattahoochee River for the city of Roswell. So very exciting things contained in the budget that we're excited to execute on.
Thank you, Director Leatherman. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I'm Dave Cox, the Deputy Director of Transportation. It's good to be with you tonight. Just to cover some of the highlights from our budget this coming year is one of our most important items that we request at the top of our list each and every year, which is our resurfacing program, which is to repave our roads. Our citizens ride our roads every day and they can feel them. And if they're uncomfortable or bumpy, I hear about it. And if you guys hear about it, I will definitely hear about it. So we usually make sure this is at the top of our list to make sure our roads are in good condition, in good standing. And also what's important about this $2 million, it helps us get the state matching funds through the LMIG grant. We get about $1 million through GDOT each year, and we have to have a local match requirement. So this makes sure we get all of those available state funds to go towards our repaving program each and every year. Also, as far as maintenance goes, our bridge maintenance and safety program, also very important. A lot of our residents really don't pay a lot of attention to our bridges, but we want to make sure they are functional, they're safe, because that is something, if a bridge stops working, it becomes a very big problem for our network. We want to make sure we can maximize all those assets. One of the most important things, it's a small amount for the bridge maintenance and safety program, $225,000, but we can get a lot done and prolong the life of our existing assets. Kind of like changing the oil in your car, you get a lot more mileage on your vehicle. Same thing goes for bridges. I'm not just talking about paint, I'm talking about doing concrete, erosion control, looking at bridges. GDOT inspects them every 2 years. So if we can just put a little bit of money into this, we can really extend the life of our bridges by 5, 10, sometimes even 15 years. So there's a tremendous cost savings by doing some investment in our bridges each and every year. As far as bridge replacements, the Jones Road Bridge, that's over on the west part of Roswell. This funding is being used for some design and preliminary engineering. That bridge carries about 8,000 cars a day between Roswell and Cobb County. It has some deficiencies that we'd like to address, so we'll use some of that aforementioned bridge maintenance project, but we also want to get it shovel ready. And what's important is the federal government has offered a grant program that offers money for bridge replacements over the next 4.5 years. If we can get this project shovel ready, we have a great opportunity to go after federal dollars, so our friends in Washington can maybe help foot the bill for construction when it's ready. And lastly is our patcher truck replacement. That is to help our staff resurface and fill in potholes. I know potholes are a minor nuisance, but we get on average around 450 pothole requests each year. So when you divide that by how many work days are in the year, we're almost getting 2 per day. So this will help our maintenance teams work and react a lot faster for our residents. And also, what's really important about this is if we have the patcher truck, it'll make our crews much more efficient, and we will only need 3 crew members to work on that unit, and we can reallocate 2 crew workers to other assignments, whether that be litter pickup, mowing, mowing grass, weed control, any of these things, or even our concrete crews. So we can definitely have a cost savings in reallocating staff time more efficiently. That'll benefit our residents.
Thank you, Assistant Director Dave Cox. Thank you, sir, very much.
So to wrap up the general fund, on a citywide basis, funding is included in the budget for employee compensation, an average 3% merit-based compensation increase effective January 1st, 2024. Additionally, there's $765,000 included for partner organizations, and that is contingent upon updating MOUs for each of those organizations. Then finally, there's operating contingency included in this budget of $2.2 million. That's there to address any unforeseen or unplanned expenses that come up during the fiscal year, as well as to provide flexibility to Mayor and Council to respond to any opportunities or initiatives that arise during the fiscal year as well. That summarizes our general fund, and we'll get into highlights of some of our other funds across the city. And with that, I'll ask Sharon Izo, our Director of Environmental Public Works, to talk about our enterprise funds.
Thank you. So for the Water and Sewer Fund, you see our source of funds there is the $5.4 million. We have the water charges that we collect through our billing. We collect a portion of the sewer charges before they're remitted to Fulton County. And then the other revenues are our meter fees and capacity fees. On the use of funds side, you see we're kind of relatively split into three different categories, almost in a balanced way. We have our salaries and benefits. Under operating is our repairs and maintenance, the water lines, supplies, meters, power, chemicals. And then under transfers, capital, and other, that would be utility billing, IT, purchasing, HR, etc. So sorry about that. So under the Water and Sewer Fund, as far as capital enhancements go, we're looking for $515,000 for water line replacement. That money will largely be used for the Woodstock water line, which we are going to be replacing with, it's an existing 6-inch line with a 10-inch line, which will help us to reinforce fire flow protection in that area of the city. Additionally, the Wave Tree Fulton County Interconnect will also provide us with a connection in that area to also boost our fire flow protection, allowing us to tie into Fulton County's system in the event that we need that support. And then lastly, we're asking for $100,000 for an emergency generator. We are waiting to hear back on our grant request for $1 million for an emergency generator to provide backup power at the water treatment plant, and our match would be $100,000. For the Stormwater Fund, in the other revenue column, that $40,000 represents interest, I am told. And then we're also going to be using a little bit of reserves to balance out the stormwater charges and our needs for the next fiscal year. Operating, you can see, is a relatively small slice of that pie for repairs, supplies, fuel, things of that nature. And then on the other side, you see a very significant piece for transfers, capital, and other. We've already reviewed what the transfers are, but you can see that largely we're looking at a large capital expenditure in stormwater to maintain the public system. Oh, I did it again. I'm going to not do that next time. For the Stormwater Fund, we are looking at a comprehensive consolidated stormwater strategy. As we went through the zero-based budgeting process, it became clear that there was a desire to allow stormwater to be a one-stop shop out of our stormwater utility, and the importance of creating that comprehensive consolidated approach. And in order to do that, one of the places we need to start is a citywide detention pond strategy, and that is the first position that we are recommending, a full-time stormwater enforcement inspection position. And that's to basically start working on the maintenance agreements that currently exist and start working with communities to make sure we're getting the annual reporting and doing volume certification, and in the event that the volume has diminished, work with those communities to get that volume restored, which is so critical for managing stormwater in the city. The second two positions are two full-time equipment operator positions. Currently, we have a CIP O&M team, pipe crew, that can go out and do construction work and replacement for us. Unfortunately, they're short a couple of folks. Basically, they cannot take on a project where we need any sort of traffic control, so these two additional positions would allow us to do that. Further, by having this full complement, we could also tackle a number of CIP projects that are a little further down the priority list, if you will, that might not be as significant as being in a roadway, but might actually be in someone's yard. And unfortunately, those are the ones that kind of languish on our list because of the grave importance we have with some of our greater ones that are threatening our roadways. So this would allow that crew to go out there and take care of some of those. The last two positions are stormwater construction inspector positions. One of the things that we have struggled with is making sure that the public infrastructure that's being installed as a part of our projects and in our parks are being installed properly and also inspected thoroughly. We have some ability to support the other departments, but it is limited. By adding these two positions, this will allow us to provide inspection and oversight for transportation projects, for rec and parks projects, for actual looking at the parks and how their infrastructure is being maintained, and also working with community development on permitted developments, both looking at the public infrastructure that is being installed, as well as the private infrastructure that is ultimately going to be in the hands of our future residents. Bringing that stormwater expertise to bear is critical so that the infrastructure that goes in gets that 50-year lifespan at the very beginning. Unfortunately, if this infrastructure doesn't go in properly, we're already starting out in the hole, which is unacceptable. So it gives us a chance to get eyes on that. From the Stormwater Master Project list, we're asking for $1.37 million to keep chipping away at that list, which probably looks at a backlog of about $20 million. But the money that we have gotten the last couple years has really allowed us to really knock some very important projects off the list. We're also asking to take a portion of that capital money and invest in a second camera. Oftentimes, we're in a position where we could actually be using two cameras at once, and it's important to be able to get those out and deploy those resources. Last night, you saw us doing just that when we were out on Canton and Webb. We had a sinkhole there, and one of the most important things was to get that camera out there and get it inside those pipes to find out if it was a stormwater issue, if it was a sanitary issue, or whether it was a water issue. And I think we actually got to see some great footage put up on our social media last night, which was fantastic. Unfortunately, sometimes those cameras in the shop, so having two means we will always have a camera ready to go, no matter what event is facing us. I think that's all I have for now. Oh no, wait a minute, solid waste. Oh geez, I was so excited about stormwater.
Yeah, Sharon,
Yes, sir.
you still got large equipment replacement. Did you
Yes,
talk?
sir.
That was your camera piece, correct?
That is the camera.
Sorry, I got distracted. Forgive me. Thank you. Oh, yeah, now you still got solid waste.
So excited
Yeah,
about stormwater.
Exactly.
Okay. Last but not least, solid waste. So on that one, our source of funds is $14.3 million, and the way we use that is for operating. That is a large percentage of how we use those funds, and a lot of that is actually in our disposal contract and in our contract for yard waste and recycling. In addition, we have significant costs for fuel and vehicle repair, keeping all those big vehicles on the road, and then about 30% of it is in salaries, and then we already covered the typical items that are in transfers and capital, and the capital, of course, is to replace our fleet of trucks. And again, just to follow up, we'll be looking to replace one of our commercial front loaders next year, as well as a residential garbage truck, and we're going to be moving toward automated side loaders. Automated side loaders allow us to run that truck with a single driver, whereas our residential garbage trucks run with a staff of 3, a driver and 2 collectors. Basically, what you can see there is that on the 10-year life cycle cost of that crew and that truck, we're going to save more than twice the amount of money by going to an automated side loader, which should yield significant dividends for us as we look forward in the solid waste fund. That's all I have.
Thank you, Director Izzo.
I have a few more funds to highlight as part of the presentation. The next one is our hotel motel fund. So we are estimating revenues in this fund of about $1.8 million for FY 2024. As you know, about 44% of that goes to tourism, conventions, and trade shows. The promotion of that goes to our CVB. We have about $688,000 of that, which is unrestricted and is being transferred to our general fund. And $344,000 of that is dedicated for tourism product development, is being set aside for future use in a capital project as mayor and council see fit. Next is our impact fee fund. In this fund, Mr. Cox mentioned a few moments ago, is funding several additional bridge replacements, the design work for that, and is positioning the city to potentially look for federal funds in the next year or two. But there's $500,000 for design for both Oxbow Road Bridge and Charles Bridge, and the other portion of that Jones Bridge Road replacement that was mentioned earlier. American Rescue Plan Act Fund, or ARPA funding. This budget includes the $5 million we mentioned earlier for the Historic Parks and Botanical Gardens Activation and Maintenance Plan. This is made possible because of $3.4 million that was already allocated for ASAN Phase 1 and 2. It's being reprogrammed towards this effort, and that's possible because of the federal grant that the city is receiving to help pay for part of ASAN Phase 1 and 2. So next steps in our budget process. So an interactive version and PDF version of the proposed budget will be available on the city's website, and a hard copy will be available here at City Hall in the Finance Department if anyone wants to stop by and take a look at that. As I mentioned already, 2 meetings are remaining. Our Monday, May 22nd will be our first budget reading, and Thursday, May 25th will be the second budget reading and adoption of the FY24 budget. Mayor, that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Ryan, for presenting the mayor's budget so admirably. And you probably noticed, I know there's a lot of questions, but I can't say enough incredibly glowing remarks and positive words, Mr. Knighton, to the entire team, to Director Gaines, Director Leatherman, Chief Conroy, Chief Bonino, Director Izzo, Assistant Director Dave Cox, and of course Director Jeff Littlefield, to Ryan and Lynn and the entire finance team, to Darrell Conley, to all the people, many people in this room who worked on this budget. I know I know how much time and effort and sweat and blood you put into this, and I really am, I don't mean to sound condescending, incredibly proud of not only the work and effort, but of the outcome. And we're going to share some of the highlights here in a minute, maybe some of the kind of the cool highlights. But if you paid attention in that budget, you probably heard any number of items that I would suggest to you that would have been radical. One or two of those items in the past would have been radical for the entire year. And you just probably heard again and again and again, item after item after item, which was a significant and dramatic improvement to the city of Roswell, done under the leadership of Mr. Knight and your staff. And by the way, Mr. Reinhardt, thank you for also being a part of this process in the last 4 weeks. It was very beneficial to have you with us. So I can't tell you how much I personally am proud of you and gratified by the work effort. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank especially 2 council members who were present in countless meetings throughout that time, the pro tem council member Christine Hall and council member Lee Hills, who were present at the overwhelming majority, if not all, of the marathon sessions that have been going on for the last several months. So great job. I don't know, we're going to have, obviously the council's got a lot of questions, I'm sure, and a lot of comments, and I'm sure the public will as well, but thank you for your great work. Really well done. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues on the council for any comments or questions on the presentation of the mayor's budget. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. So why are we having a special called meeting this week, the same week as the first reading? Because I guess the concerns I have is we certainly are going to want to hear from the public when there's votes. I'm sure there could be a number of changes the night of the first reading. and we'd want to make sure the public has the chance to really be weighing in on cuts they feel we should be making, additions we feel should be making. And then a bigger concern, or equally big concern I have, is not only planning it just 3 nights later, but the night when a lot of kids have their last day of school, having other obligations, not being able to come here to advocate for their things. So I guess what was the reason for doing a special called meeting this year versus, I thought historically it would always be done in a regularly scheduled council meeting?
I'll address that, Mike. You've laid out about 30 talking points, and I won't address each one of them because they're all tempting to address, but I'll address the last one. The amount of work product put into this budget, I would say in comparative years, this has far outpaced the amount of work product. So there's a lot more work and knowledge and information put in this, not only from the staff talent side, but from the elected side. And you are the elected representatives, you are the voice of the people, and so you do have a responsibility to weigh in on this budget and be knowledgeable about this budget. And I dare say that there's already a significant amount of information already held within this body about this budget. These, in the past, the budgets might have been a surprise to the electeds. I dare say that a lot of things, and if there are things that you've got, that's the presentation, and we've got a week and 3 days to go through it. But this group, this body of people, the staff and talent, are significantly ahead of years past. And I would suggest to you that the elected body is significantly ahead of years past in terms of not only presenting the budget, but in terms of passing a budget. Significantly not only funding key items, but also delivering. And Ryan, I was surprised you didn't go into it because you showed the millage rate at 4.463 existing. But one of the big things that's a deliverable on this budget is that the rollback rate, based upon our estimations, will probably come in around 4.10. We won't know that till July. If you get into details of this budget, what we're prepared to deliver to the people of Roswell is probably an M&O millage rate of 3.98, probably when it's all said and done. So we're actually going to go below the rollback rate, which is not only, I don't know if there's historical precedence on that. So happy to get into any details, Mike. I haven't noticed a lot of families coming up on budget nights to come talk and discuss about budgets. And obviously, if that's your concern, is that, but our concern was, we've done the work, happy to talk about it, but I'm prepared to do something historically way ahead and to have a budget delivered a month ahead of time so we can begin the work that we've been working on for the last 9 months, which is the beginning of the zero-based budgeting process and taking it to its next level. And you can see the joy when I mention that to the staff, because this is a dramatic change for any organization, and the number of governments in the United States that are undertaking this kind of dramatic reform in their budgeting process, you can put on one hand. So happy to discuss any of those many items you talked about, but the reason is, again, you can blame me for it. They put the work in, we put the work in, this budget's pretty dang solid. If there's cuts you want to make, but I can tell you we're delivering not only a balanced budget, but we're delivering a reduction of the millage rate below the rollback rate, and the actual millage rate we estimate will come in at 3.98. Councilman Palermo.
Excellent. Yeah, I think there's no question in the amount of work that this mayor and this council and this staff has put into the budget. I think there's no question. I think Mayor, there's certainly I don't think there's anybody that's invited and included more for collaboration. There's no question in all that, but I am very focused on the residents getting to weigh in, and frankly, the number one biggest meeting that will always have the most resident engagement is going to be a rezoning. But number two behind that is, I've certainly seen over the years, the number two has been the budget, depending on what was there. And so that's where I have the concern with it being a special called meeting. given that the budget doesn't come into effect until July 1st anyways, I don't see the benefit in rushing it a month earlier and not having a special, and not having it at a regularly scheduled meeting for the opportunity for them to see what does it look like after first reading and what they want to advocate for. Because yes, we're representative government, and certainly I have complete confidence everybody at this dais can be very, very well versed in the budget. But I think as a representative government, we need to give residents the opportunity to weigh in. You know, are there priorities that we've laid out that we're not funding this year? Are there just some opportunities that they see regarding expenses, et cetera? So I strongly believe this council needs to look at not having it at a special called meeting, not having it the last day of school for when there might be other obligations, and just making sure that we're welcoming residents with it. So that's something I certainly ask this mayor and this council to consider. I had 4 questions. The mayor already answered one of them, so specific to it. So one was I got a little concerned when I saw that staff showed a millage rate equal to the current millage rate, where I figure with assessments, et cetera, I would expect to need to roll back to a lower rate. So what I just heard from the mayor is that actually, even though you showed that same millage rate, this budget is actually assuming and equaling a lower millage rate. Is that accurate?
Yes, the revenues that are reflected in the budget are based on the current millage rate, but as we looked at opportunities for reduction, you know, in this current year, the rollback rate was the equivalent of about $0.25 mil. That would get you down to the 3.1 that the mayor mentioned. But
4.1, sorry.
Yeah, 4.1.
Sorry.
4.1. But as the mayor mentioned, there's enough flexibility in the budget to bring that down even further.
So here's actually my question. With the expenses presented, does it equal above 4.1 or at or below 4.1?
The expenses presented, it would be below 4.1.
Perfect, thank you. So that's excellent.
Can I'll answer it more specifically, because he's trying to be careful, as he should. That's his job. The number we came in at, Mike, we estimate in July. Of course, estimation, you got to wait. We don't know until the Fulton County Digest comes in, which will be in July. So there is, you know, some unknowns. The number this budget should deliver is a 3.98 M&O on the millage rate, which if you look at historically, I mean, he just showed you a 10-year slide. You saw the M&O millage rate. This is going to deliver a 3.98 M&O on the millage rate.
I'm very focused on making sure we're always getting back down to the rollback, and so really great job.
Below
with
rollback.
that. Fantastic. And so a question I have, and these questions, Mayor and staff, I'm actually not looking for an answer tonight, but if you want to throw them out, I'm happy to hear them. But I also want to say it's completely fine for staff, of course, to email and have printouts for us at that first reading. But a question I'm going to have is, road resurfacing, $2 million sounded a little lower than what I expected. And I want to understand, I know there have been certainly years that we've done even lower than that.
I'll address it.
Yeah.
So I'll take the hit on this. So until this body approves changing the fiscal year budget to meet the calendar year, we've got, you know, our fiscal year starts July 1st rather than January 1st. That is, we are carrying on one of the pieces that we've done in the past. So in January, $2 million will come back again for that half year of FY24. So technically, there's $4 million in the budget, but you're seeing $2 million in the FY24 budget, but $2 million will show back up. Another $2 million will be funded additionally in, and that's because of the difference of the calendar year and the fiscal year. So one day, I hope we recommend, and this body will look at it, is measuring up the calendar year and the fiscal year, but make that much easier, just put $4 million there.
This one council member would like us to, even with the fiscal calendar we have, to just, if we expect to spend $4 million over the next year, I'd like to budget for $4 million, and that's probably something just for this mayor and council to be aware of. That's probably something that I'll look to suggest from an ad standpoint, and I think something we're certainly hearing and seeing is that our road maintenance is such a priority. It is so important to do that for the safety of Roswell residents. So I want to make sure that who knows what type of recession that the country could be entering, et cetera, no matter what, that we're focused with a budget, that even if things don't end up as well as we all hope they do the next 6 months, that we've got the full amount necessary to do as much road resurfacing as possible. And so that's something that I'll plan on discussing at the first reading. Another question I have, Mr. Luckett, is even though the roles, even though it includes all the benefits, et cetera, some of them seemed higher compensation than I expected. But I do just want to confirm that, of course, any number you showed was not just the salary, but that was full benefits, full costs. I'm seeing you nodding your head yes, so thank you for confirming that. And then something you don't need to walk through right now, but I'd want to send and make sure that we have clear prior to the first reading, is just seeing the partner requests and then the partner proposals kind of next to them for each thing there. So those are gonna be the things that I'll certainly be reviewing among a lot of other details with here. But that's everything I had for tonight. And again, even though as always I certainly have different feedback, et cetera, I think there's no question that this mayor and the finance liaison and team and so much of staff has all worked really hard, and really glad that although we might have some different discussions of adds or subtracts, it sounds like there will not need to be a debate on whether or not we're going back to the rollback rate, which I think makes everything a lot easier.
Oh, there sure will. You had that $2 million back in. Goodbye rollback rate.
Well, I'm actually confident I can find 2 million and make sure we're still at the rollback rate.
I can't wait to have that discussion. Councilmember Beeson.
Single question. Obviously, this is a zero-based budget. Does this year's budget, or will this year's budget establish zero, and are we locking that in for any amount of years? Like, City of Atlanta several years ago locked in for a zero-based budget for a 5-year reassessment, or is this going to be an exercise we all get to partake in next year?
There's probably two different answers to that question,
Okay,
Sarah.
got it.
There's my answer to that question. And there's Ryan's answer to that question. Ryan, you would take first shot at that?
I have a feeling I know what the mayor's going to say. No, I think that, as I mentioned earlier, there were, coming into this, the zero-based aspect really focused on the organization and different ways of doing things, different ways of making improvements. Definitely, the bulk of that is not, is still to be determined, much work to be done on that. And so that's why I said earlier, I think that this process will definitely continue because there's a lot more to be done that really wasn't ready to be baked into the budget. So I anticipate that that effort will continue moving forward.
Sarah, did that answer your question?
That's fair. Just so that I can wrap my head around that before we go into the true first reading of, are we really establishing zero, and is this something that we're fully committing to for 3, 5, X number of years down the road, or if we're looking at this as this is an ongoing process? Thank you.
I'd say ongoing process. This was last year was incremental PBB, priority based. This year was zero based. It's got a whole lot of stuff in it. It's tough for an organization to get into ZBB. I mean, it was brutal. It was brutal on the organization, and they did a heck of a job. I think going through the process year one sets it up even better for year two. And I think you're going to see some interesting things happen during the course of the year. I think you're going to see Mr. Knight and his team bring some things to you during the course of the year through some organizational activity that you'll find fascinating. That'll be as a consequence of what happened in the past 6-9 months, which is not delivered here in this budget. Councilmember Morthland.
The, the one thing that I'm seeing in the presentation tonight that I think we can all be proud of is it does have a lot of reactionary line items in here, but the main thing that I'm seeing is a lot of visionary items, things that are going to kick the ball off in a lot of departments for a lot of things that we've been asking to do, a lot of things that the department heads and the various department members have been asking for. These are the type things that I'm seeing that are being highlighted in here that we're really setting the tone for future. And congratulations to the department staff and the members there for coming through and executing on your request.
Yeah, thank you, Will. They were pretty amazing. They really were. Any other comments from council? Comments? Councilmember Vanstrom.
Yeah, you know that I'm always the slow it down guy a little bit, and I apologize, Mr. Mayor, because you have done such an outstanding job yourself, and your enthusiasm for this shows how hard you've worked, and we all appreciate that. But the 25th is the first day for many, many people for Memorial Day holidays as well, and attendance that evening would be a little tricky for, I would imagine, a lot of citizens who might want to be here. So I'm excited this is moving so quickly and crisply and efficiently, but I don't see a lot of harm in pushing this back a little bit to make sure that we've got all the residents can be at the meeting that want to be at the meeting, and also that we don't get into any transparency discussions that we're trying to railroad this a little too quick. That's a concern that I have.
Thank you, Peter. Is there a suggestion from the Honorable Councilman Palermo and the Honorable Councilmember Vanstrom on a date that they would find more acceptable, just out of curiosity?
I would see it as a expectation like done in the past of having it at a Monday night when people expect a council meeting, and Monday, June 12th. Which would still put us many weeks before the deadline.
That is 3 weeks after the first reading? Councilmember Vanstrom.
Again, I don't want to take the air out of your sails because I know how hard you work, and I know how important it is to be able to say that this thing is done before Memorial Day. Can we just say it's really close and then finish at the 12th?
I'm not done. No, I think your point. I think you both bring up a good point. It's hard to say. Why not do it June 5th or June 12th or June 19th? I'm not disagreeing with you. My expectation would be is that our Roswell residents will weigh in on this in the next 10 days by May 22nd. And have a good sense of what they like or what they disapprove of. And that you'll know, obviously, before we go into that meeting. But if there is a desire by the body to push it back, I'm not dying on the hill. I would say, I probably, when you said the past, Michael, I went, ugh, it's exact good reason not to do it. Because, I will tell you, this budget process is so different from the past. And I think that, by the way, Brian, say it again where this budget is so everybody can go see it. So they need to know where they can go look at this budget now. Because they can do a deep dive on any item, correct? So we let everybody know where they can go look at the budget.
All the line item detail will be there at www.roswellgov.com/budget.
Yes.
And I believe it'll be loaded tonight. It's up now.
It's up right now. Fantastic. So for anybody who wants to go look at the FY24 proposed mayor's budget, it's at, say again?
roswellgov.com/budget.
/budget. Thank you, Ryan. Okay. All right, so we'll come back, and I'm sure some residents will weigh in, and I'm sure they're probably going to agree with you. Any other comments from council? Okay, very good. Thanks. Oh, Councilmember Hall, yes.
I just have a point of personal privilege. Would it be appropriate now?
Yes, ma'am, it sure would.
Thank you.
This is a point of personal privilege by the pro tem Councilmember Christine Hall.
Director Izzo, could you come up and read what is on this bottle of wine that you brought to our retreat?
Happily. So this bottle of wine was my Christmas gift from my amazing deputy, Brian Watson. 2020 conundrum out of California. Directions: open and drink when interpreting zero-based budgeting. Answers become more clear as bottle becomes more empty.
Thank you. And we, just on behalf of Mayor and all of council, we know how brutal and difficult this process has been for all of you. And it is a first step in the culture change because we are changing our culture and operating as a business and not a traditional government, where we are taking those values and applying them to what we do. And we recognize you for that. And I have something very special for Ryan and Lynn. Lynn, could you come up, please? Your own berry bottles, and especially for you.
Wait till we're done, Ryan.
Wait till it's passed.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. So wait till it's passed. Thank you, Christine. You know, Christine really debated whether she'd get you flowers or not as well. So you guys are amazing. Thank you. All right, so now take it to any Roswell residents who would like to comment. Yes, ma'am, please come join us. Welcome Janet Russell, Roswell resident. Recently moved here, so we're glad to have you.
My money. You're spending it, you're doing a good job. And don't forget, it's our money. I just have two questions, one for Chief Conroy and one for Jeff Leatherman. Chief Conroy, you mentioned that there was a budget item of $370,000 for two new positions for child sex trafficking units? Crimes against children unit. Two positions for $370,000. What does that involve? Otherwise, they're each being paid $185,000 for salaries. That's more than the city administrator makes.
Salaries, equipment.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Does that include? You need to be specific on that because it sounds like you're just paying two people $185,000 each, in which case I'm in the wrong business.
It's in the line.
Okay, and secondly, Mr. Leatherman, you mentioned 6 positions for trails and management or something for $130,000. That means these people are paying less than $25,000 each. That is below the poverty line. I think we need to do better than that with our star parks, paying people and expecting them to maintain them and earn less than what the poverty limit is in this city or in this county. Hello, what do they have to pay you to be out there eaten by mosquitoes? So I think we need to revisit that if that's true. 6 for $130,000 was like $25,000. He didn't pay me to say that. I'm just saying.
Thank you for advocating for my team.
No.
We appreciate you. Hold on, I'll give you the answer.
Thank you.
Yes, we have offsets in our contract maintenance, so that is the additional cost associated with those positions
Okay.
that's not currently in my budget.
Okay, but it looked like you were
I know.
getting 6 new people and we weren't paying them jack.
I'm with you.
Yes, ma'am, we understand.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
didn't have to write it down or put it on a phone. I remember what I hear. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Welcome to Drama City in Roswell. You know, every day is a drama, right? Because these people have nothing better to do than have drama in their lives.
Thank you, Janet. Any other Roswell residents like to comment on the FY24 presentation of budget? Mr. Johnson, welcome. Another Roswell resident, David Johnson. How are you, sir? Welcome to our city.
These words have never been spoken by me at this podium. I agree with Councilman Palermo.
All right, your time is up.
Yeah, thank you. I think the date for the second reading is a really bad date for what these two gentlemen and council members said. So I think June 12th would be a great date.
Thank you, DJ.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other Roswell residents that would like to comment on the presentation of budget? Thank you very much, and thank you for your comments. And I will tell you selfishly, again, I am to blame. I was trying to not give myself a break. Honestly, I was trying to give the staff a break. Like, give this thing some clarity. It's done. Wrap it up. Let's go. They've worked their tails off. I didn't want to elongate it any further, but I understand the thoughts behind it. So I bring it back to council for any additional thoughts, comments, or questions on the presentation. Yes, sir, Councilmember Palermo.
Just one other thing, again, don't need the answers or information tonight, but similar to last year, when we added on the full-time captains, you had given us not only the costs of the salary and the benefits, but therefore which costs were recurring versus which ones were one time. And so for each new role, I'd really want to see that separation, just because I think one time is very relevant compared to knowing that we're paying it every single year.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Any other thoughts, questions, or comments from council? Very good. Well, that being said, with no other thoughts, comments, or questions, and the end of Roswell comments, comments from Roswell residents, there are no other items. This special called Mayor and Council meeting of May 11th, 2023 is adjourned. Thank you very much.